Somebody in your life right now is getting wealthier every single month. You don't know it. They don't post about it. They don't talk about it at dinner. They show up to the same job, drive the same car, wear the same shoes, and they are quietly, systematically, building something that will change the entire trajectory of their life. And the wild part? They learned the hard way that the moment you tell someone, everything gets harder. This is not a motivation speech. This is a warning dressed up as a lesson.
I found them.
Let's go back to 2019. A 28-year-old warehouse logistics coordinator in Ohio, we'll call him Marcus, made about $54,000 a year. Nothing spectacular. He wasn't in tech. He didn't have a trust fund. He didn't flip houses on weekends. What he did was strange by modern standards. He stopped talking about money entirely. No posts about his investment portfolio. No telling his cousin he'd started buying index funds. No mentioning to his coworkers that he was living off 60% of his income and routing the rest into boring, invisible financial vehicles most people can't even pronounce. 3 years later, his net worth had grown from roughly $8,000 to just over $91,000. Nobody noticed. That was the point.
I must plant this seed.
Here's the uncomfortable truth that most personal finance content won't tell you because it doesn't make for a good thumbnail. Wealth, in its early stages, is extraordinarily fragile. Not financially fragile, socially fragile. The moment you announce it, you don't get encouragement. You get friction. You get opinions. You get the slow, invisible pressure of other people's expectations reshaping your behavior. There's actually a term behavioral economists use: social spending triggers. The idea is simple. When people in your immediate circle know you have money, or are building it, your spending patterns change. Not because you want them to, because human beings are wired for social conformity in ways that are almost impossible to override consciously. Studies out of the University of Michigan found that people who disclosed their financial goals to others in social settings were statistically less likely to follow through on them compared to those who kept their goals private. The act of announcing the goal gave the brain a small reward hit, similar to actually achieving it, and so the drive to follow through weakened. You told everyone you were saving. Your brain thought it had already won, and then slowly, quietly, you stopped. Now compound that with what happens in the real world when people around you know you have money. It starts subtle. A friend assumes you'll cover dinner. A family member mentions a business idea that needs just a small investment. A coworker starts asking questions that feel like curiosity, but land like audits. You start feeling, without anyone saying it directly, that your financial choices need to be justified to people who are not your accountant. And here's where it gets really interesting. The average American carries about $6,000 in credit card debt at any given time. The average savings rate in the US hovered around 3.6% in 2023, one of the lowest in decades. Most people are not building wealth. Most people are managing survival month to month. When you start doing something different, you become illegible to them, and humans are deeply uncomfortable with what they can't read. So they push back, not with malice usually, just with the slow gravitational pull of a lifestyle that doesn't include what you're doing. And if you're not careful, you get pulled back in. The wealthy figured this out a long time ago. There's a reason old money doesn't look like new money. New money buys the watch first. Old money builds the portfolio first, and maybe buys the watch 15 years later, almost as an afterthought. The Millionaire Next Door, a research project turned book by Thomas Stanley, spent years studying actual wealthy households in America. What they found broke almost every cultural assumption about what rich looks like. The majority of millionaires in the US drive used cars. They live in modest homes. They do not wear their wealth. They wear discretion like a second skin, because they understand something critical: visibility is expensive. When you look wealthy, people treat you like a resource. When you look ordinary, people leave you alone. And being left alone, financially, socially, psychologically, is one of the most underrated advantages in the game. Let's talk about the math for a second, because this is where it gets almost absurd. If you invest $500 a month starting at age 25, at an average market return of 8% annually, by 65 you have roughly $1.75 million. Most people know this. Almost nobody does it. But here's the part nobody talks about. The first 10 years of that journey, you have almost nothing to show for it. At year 5, you've got maybe $36,000. It doesn't feel like anything. It certainly doesn't feel like you're on the way to $1.75 million. That gap between what you're doing and what it looks like you're doing is exactly where social pressure destroys most people's financial futures. Because if you've told people you're building wealth, and all you have to show at year 4 is a modest brokerage account in the same apartment, the narrative starts to crack. People doubt you. And worse, you start to doubt yourself. The silence protects the compounding. There's also a class dynamic here that rarely gets addressed honestly. If you come from a working class background and you start building wealth, you will face something that researchers call upward mobility guilt. It's the discomfort of having more than the people you love.
It's the way money can quietly rewrite relationships you didn't think were about money at all. Some people self-sabotage because of it. Not consciously, they just suddenly find a reason to spend, a reason to help, a reason to stop. Because staying financially invisible to your own community feels in some deeply human way like betrayal. This is real. It is not weakness. It is one of the most under-examined mechanisms behind why generational wealth is so hard to create in families that don't already have it. The silence isn't about hiding from others. Sometimes it's about protecting yourself from your own unexamined guilt. And then there's the other side, the people who are very loud about what they're building. The crypto influencer who made $400,000 in 1 year and told everyone, then lost $380,000 of it and told no one. The entrepreneur who announced his 7-figure revenue figures and forgot to mention the 6-figure debt that funded it. The lifestyle content creator whose entire identity is financial success and who privately hasn't slept in 3 months. Visibility is not evidence of wealth. It is often the opposite of it. The loudest people in financial spaces are frequently the most leveraged, the most anxious, and the most dependent on the performance of success rather than the reality of it. Real wealth is profoundly boring to watch. It happens in automatic transfers, in unchanged lifestyles, in the quiet click of a dividend being reinvested into more shares of something that nobody at the party is talking about. So here's where we land. This is not about becoming secretive or paranoid. It's not about cutting people off or living in a financial bunker. It's about understanding that the early stages of building anything real require a kind of protected silence. You don't announce a tree while you're still planting the seed. The people who get this tend to share one trait. They become deeply, almost unnervingly comfortable with looking like nothing is happening, while everything is happening. And that is a skill. Maybe one of the most financially important skills nobody teaches, because every system around you is designed to spend, signal, and perform. The mall, the algorithm, the group chat, the reunion, all of it is pulling you towards visibility. The question worth sitting with isn't whether you can build wealth quietly. The question is whether you're willing to live in the gap